Watch the entire video, my lovely viewers, I mean from start to finish, to get the whole thing. Without wasting much of your time, let's get right into it.
This is DJ Mutati exclusive.
Hi lovely viewers, it's me again, your one and only Mutati Mpundu. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time on my channel, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting the subscribe button down below. Turn the bell icon to join the notification squad. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think about this video in the comment section below. I'll be super glad to hear from you lovely viewers.
Welcome back. Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu will be buried in South Africa. According to Lungu's family, the former statesman will be buried in Johannesburg in a private funeral. The announcement comes after Zambia's president, Hakainde Hichilema, abruptly ended the national mourning period for Lungu. In his address yesterday, Hichilema announced the immediate end to the mourning period, saying the country needed to resume normal life. Earlier this week, the repatriation of Lungu's body from South Africa was also cancelled by his family following uncertainty on where the former leader would be buried. Lungu, who led Zambia from 2015 to 2021, died earlier this month in South Africa, where he was receiving treatment for an undisclosed illness. We are now joined by George Twoy, former Zambian ambassador to South Africa, as well as Lungu's friend. Bab Twoy, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time and availing yourself for us this evening. We certainly do appreciate it. So maybe I want us just to start off by having a conversation about the relationship between yourself and former statesman Edgar Lungu. I mean, you started your serving as a High Commissioner to Zambia for South Africa in 2019, when he had already been president since 2015. There were tensions between the two countries at the time. Just talk to us about how that began between the two of you.
Well, the tension, thank you for having me. The tensions between South Africa and Zambia at the time were not really tensions in the true sense of the word.
Okay.
Just some misunderstanding regarding some one or two issues which I think my arrival tended to resolve all those problems. And what I would say, when I presented my credentials, I had found President Lungu to have been quite a warm person, quite forward, quite understanding, reasonable, so to speak. And he actually made my task as South Africa's High Commissioner there quite easy, quite easy. Quite a lot of things I think that one could have done, but I think we did well. We did well. We did well. I can say that for sure.
You spoke at his memorial service.
Yes.
And in your address, you mentioned how he was down to earth and one with the people. How important is it for a statesman, especially on the African continent, to understand his people at such a grassroots level?
You see, if you have a leader of that type of person, you immediately have got a full understanding. You don't really depend on everybody else whispering on your ear. I think that's one of the most critical issues that I think President Lungu had. He could listen to his people. He could be told issues by his advisors, but he was no fool. He was no fool. I mean, he's a lawyer professionally, but he was no fool. He listened very well. And I think it's quite a shame that, well, most of the time, some of our leaders, we only see them during elections, you know, when they're now campaigning, etc. And you find by the time they come into to campaign, they are surprised by quite a whole range of issues, you know. But well, they'll do a very good job kissing babies and shaking hands and visiting our grannies and telling them that they will get their pensions and even adjusted upward with about 20 cents just to buy a loaf of bread.
Right.
So, but for Lungu, I think he was quite a very warm person.
And what would you say were his key policies that defined his presidency at the time?
More than anything else, I think he was a Pan-Africanist. A shy one at that, I think. Let me put it like that. Because on some issues, especially when it came to the issues of Polisario Front, he wasn't quite certain which is which, but he followed what the developments were. And to a great extent, he carried the ethos that was carried by his previous president, KK. He learned quite a lot from him. I think also during his reign, he really wanted to see also the continent, in fact, the region. He really worked very well with his peers. Well, others may argue that he was much more closer to Zimbabwe than anybody else. But, I mean, these guys share the same border with President Mugabe. So he did quite a whole range of issues. As from the region's point of view, I think he was a very good man. He was a very good man.
And I mean, you also mentioned in your address in the memorial, I mean, he fondly referred to you as Brother George. So when speaking to Brother George, especially about Pan-Africanism, what was his take on how he's seeing the rest of the continent approaching Pan-Africanism, and just what are the influences from the global north on African leaders?
More than anything else, I think he was quite uncomfortable with the Western view and development supposed to be aid and issues of that kind. And that's the reason why I think more than anything else, he tended to look towards the East to try and develop his country. And during his tenure, frankly speaking, he did quite a lot in terms of infrastructural development. Well, it is argued today that he plunged the country into too much debt, towards the Chinese, et cetera, et cetera. But when the West was not forthcoming, what do you expect anybody else to do? And whatever he did, I mean, you look at the airport that they have today, look at the flyovers, resolving the issues of traffic congestion on the streets, etc. I think he did quite a lot for Zambia. He may have had his own challenges, some of them which he can't really defend himself on, climate issues that impacted on agriculture in Zambia, but more than anything else, he even opened up the country and was saying South Africa should actually come in terms of supplies, in terms, and financially, in economic terms. Yeah. I think our relations with Zambia were very good during this time.
When you had those last conversations with him, or maybe just conversations after his tenure, what would he cite as some of the things that he would look back as mistakes that he has done in that time?
He didn't say much, but there is one critic in Zambia who is a thorn, and a thorn this big on all presidents in Zambia. The guy is is a doctor at the University of Stellenbosch, Dr. Sishua. He is such a thorn on anybody who's on that hot seat. I was surprised when he said, and he was pointing to him when we visited him, said, you know this man, if only I had listened to him and not listened to some of the whispers that I was told, that he was critical of me, he was what, I think this man is just a good Zambian who just wants to see good. He means well. If I had seen him, if I had listened to him, and not the distorted versions sometimes that were given to me, because I wanted to meet him at some stage. And I was told, he's working for CIA and all sorts of conspiracy theories. And he wasn't quite sure how to handle it. But he now realizes, a joke is that one cadre of the Patriotic Front literally went for him, and because he was challenging Lungu's third term, he then said, no, this man must be arrested for treason. You know, it wasn't an easy thing. But Lungu himself says, I think it was Ambassador Mwamba, he says, that man, he was good, he had these good intentions, but I think he missed it with Sishua. Because Sishua took him to the cleaners, took him through to lawyers, and he won his case, and even cost him to pay him, you know, it was a libel suit, and he took that money, quite a paltry sum of money, and he handed it over to some NGO. But for Lungu, looking at that, he said, I know the two. Mwamba was a good man, or he is a good man, who has got a different take to issues, and he doesn't tolerate criticism in as much as I did not tolerate it. So there was quite a lot of what we call back home doonadering. They actually were very, very friendly, and they became very, very warm, to the extent that he says all leaders, and I wish even the current president, President Hakainde Hichilema, I wish he could sit down and sometimes listen to what this young man is saying. He's a very young man, very dynamic, but hey, the boy has got a terrible pen.
And how important is it to have such differing views, especially for people that are leading a country, that are moving communities out of impoverishment, out of the shackles of the West, like you mentioned, in listening to those differing views and applying them in the work that they do?
It can only benefit the electorate. It can only benefit the ordinary man in the street. It can only benefit the student. It can only benefit even the economy, even those big shots in the captains of industries. At least maybe they can begin to understand some of the problems. If a president speaks, I think business people would tend to understand what he's talking about. Yes, they would always want to have money, but what is critical, if they listen to him, then maybe the opportunities they can begin to open up. And not only look at profit, but actually be informed by having a little bit of a conscience, just a little bit of a conscience, to allow other people to develop, and in that way develop the country as a whole.
Then the tensions between the current government and former President Lungu. Maybe just take us through what your view is in terms of really what was at the heart of this impasse.
Well, I think at the heart of this impasse, it all started in 2016 in the elections. I think the current president lost to Lungu. This is very thin margin. He argued that Lungu cheated him. He flatly refused to acknowledge him as the president of the country. And these tensions continued throughout. I guess Lungu too, I think sometime there was a program in somewhere in the southern province, Komboka, there's a program where, you know, the plains of Zambia can be flooded by water. And President, he was leader of the opposition at the time, of the UPND. He refused to give way for the president to pass. And the President Lungu apparently retaliated at a later stage, got him arrested and threw him into prison for about 3-4 months or something. And I think from that moment onwards, this went on, carried on to this day. And it's very sad that it had to come to this day where they can't, President Hakainde Hichilema just refused to be the bigger person and simply allow. You see, when this one died, apparently said to the family, I don't want this man anywhere next to my body or to my grave. Because he said that, that has been communicated to him. But President Hakainde, I think, insists, I'm the head of state. I need to prevail over the funeral.
Tole, let's hold it there. I want us to go for a quick ad break, and I really want us to extend on, because that leads to where we currently are, where we are seeing former President Lungu now possibly being buried in South Africa, as his family has put out a statement. And just what are the legalities around, or constitutionality with the Zambian government with regards to a former statesman? But I want you just to hold that thought. We are in conversation with George Twoy, who's a former Zambian ambassador to South Africa and also Lungu's friend. So do stay with us. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. We are in conversation with George Twoy, who's a former Zambian ambassador to South Africa and a friend to Zambia's former president, Edgar Lungu, who is set to be buried here in South Africa, first ever for a state president. Babtala, so before the break, we were still having a conversation about the current state that we're seeing with regards to the impasse between now the family of former statesman Edgar Lungu, as well as the Zambian government, and him now being buried in South Africa. You were with him, in fact, when he arrived in South Africa, about 2 weeks before his death, I believe. There's a book that you're launching tomorrow, Struggle as a Way of Life.
Yes.
And that book speaks about your life in the struggle, being part of the Soweto 11, being someone who really was very instrumental in ensuring that young people were able to voice out what it is that they wanted from the apartheid government at the time. And you handed former statesman Lungu a copy of that book. That was your last encounter with him. And in fact, that was the first official picture of him since January of 2025. Just talk to us about the struggles that he was experiencing as a former statesman, being in Zambia, trying to come to South Africa for treatment, and subsequently now his life having ended.
Yeah. Well, he arrived in South Africa, I think, sometime in January.
Yes.
You see, at some stage when he was head of state, he did come to South Africa and he got treatment for his illness. I would want to believe, but I'm not sure if I can say it. Maybe it was cancer-related, I don't know. So when he lost power and there was a change of government, President Hakainde then came into power. Even the handover of power at the stadium was not quite a normal thing that you always see. But we'll leave that. As they continued at the time, I think some bit of harassment. You would even begin to think it was now, it's my turn, your turn is gone, I'm in charge. Where the president was denied, he asked for permission to travel. You know, there are certain privileges that presidents have. You're allowed to travel once a month or once a year or twice a year to any place of your choice, state expense, etc. I think he applied sometime in 2022 or 2023 and he was refused.
And this would be for him to travel to receive treatment?
To receive treatment. He was refused. On one other occasion, I think it was 2023, I think, he had already had his luggage in the plane. I think it was an Abu Dhabi flight. It had to be offloaded from the train and he was denied the right to travel. I actually went to see him shortly after that incident because I thought that there was a likelihood, that it was a South African Airways flight. And I went to see him to actually find out, is that true? Was it South African Airways? He says, no. It was an Emirates flight. Why is it? He says, I don't understand it. Because on this occasion, the state refuses me travel at its expense. I'm traveling on my own, at my own expense, and I'm denied the right. So these issues continued. I think at some stage, I guess, he got fed up. And he thought he must return to politics. And for saying that, the president, and I think it said it is in the Constitution, I'm not quite sure, I haven't studied that Constitution to that extent. So he therefore had all his privileges stripped so that he can't, I guess the argument was, you can't be a part of the opposition and still expect the state to
enjoy the fruits
exactly, and enjoy the fruits. So they withdrew them. He didn't mind. So he continued trying to travel and could not until the UN rapporteur was coming to Zambia. Somehow, I don't know how he did it, but when the rapporteur landed, he was at the airport. He could not be stopped, so he traveled out.
And that's how he made
That's
it.
how he came to South Africa. So he went through his medications, still at his own expense. At his own expense, not at state expense. And even when, you know, when he had died, if you listened to the statement that was issued by both government spokesperson and the family when they were trying to resolve the matter with a view that he travels on Wednesday. If you look at the beginning of those statements, both of them came, it was not a joint statement. It were two separate statements by two parties, in the sense that the Lungu family said he was here on his own steam, and the government representative, Secretary to Parliament, said he was there at government steam. So you actually realize that the things were just terrible between the two. Now, where are we now? I understand. The family has since, you know, since yesterday's statement, I heard you on the news when you announced that the president, or when you reported that the president has now suspended the
period of
mourning.
mourning.
The period of mourning. The family feels, even if there were to be any mediation, that mediation would only happen and be acceptable until he takes off. When he lands on the ground, things may change. So they just felt, just to have peace, they would therefore exercise other options. Apparently, they will bury in South Africa, which is a real shame. It's a real shame.
And I really want you to expand on that. I suppose many Zambians were looking forward to that last send-off of their former statesman. What does this do in stripping a nation of having that opportunity of burying their former statesman?
Kato, I still say President Hakainde lost an opportunity to be the bigger man. He should have just stood aside and allowed the body to be brought in without conditions and let them bury. The impact of that decision comes in this way. One, clearly it further traumatizes the family. Secondly, it traumatizes the general public. It's not only members of the Patriotic Front. When you become a president, you're not a president of a particular party.
Right.
You become the president of the country. I'm sure there are those who voted for Lungu, who supported him from the southern province, others from the western province, whatever provinces are. So he was a president of a country. And what you know what has happened here? It's really hurting. I'm saying hurting not so much as for Lungu, but the image of Zambia. That's a country that looked after us. That's a country where not only us, the entire southern region, all their leaders stayed there. It's a peaceful country. People are warm. People are welcoming. Now, to see them act in this way, it doesn't augur well. It does not augur well for the stability of that country.
Just for us in closing and wrapping up, I mean, he will be buried in South Africa, in Johannesburg to be particular. What does that do for relations between South Africa as a country and Zambia?
Well, it shouldn't affect us. Okay. It's a choice of the family. South Africa does not get involved in the domestic affairs. This is a domestic issue. It's a Zambian issue. South Africa stands on the side and merely says, you are here, it's fine. You dead, you want to be buried here, go ahead. We have no option. There is no issue. Right. It should not affect our relations. It should not. There is no reason for it.
And any possibility of a future repatriation of the former statesman back to Zambia?
Well, we've repatriated our own. I'm sure Zambians would demand that their president must come back to the country.
Bob George Twoy, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and just giving us this colorful life that you have spent with the former statesman. We certainly do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you to our viewers.
All right, then. So that was George Twoy, former Zambian ambassador to South Africa, and a friend to Zambia's former president, Edgar Lungu. More news after this.
This is DJ Mutati exclusive.
Alright, that's all for you today, lovely viewers. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about the video you just watched in the comment section below. I'll be super glad to hear from you, lovely viewers. Once again, I go by the name of Mutati Mpundu. I love you, peace, I gotta go.